Testing.
Principals for special ed over.
Good evening. Today is Monday, August 26, 2024. We are at the Green Ladle and we'll call the meeting to order. That clock is definitely not, it's not 1:10. 5:32 p.m. with the Pledge of Allegiance. We will start school committee member introductions with Counselor Harriman.
Scott Harriman, City Council Representative to the School Committee.
Donna Glant, Ward 7.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Ashley Medina, Ward 5.
Craig Charpentier, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Phoenix McLaughlin, Ward 1.
Megan Parks at large.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is to receive and potentially vote on the nomination for Carrie Jackson for the assistant principal position at Lewiston Middle School, and Principal Bryant will present.
Good evening, everyone. So I am really pleased to nominate Carrie Jackson for the position of assistant principal at the middle school. Carrie has had 16 years in education. This is her 17th year. She has spent some time the last 3 years. She was the assistant principal for special education at the middle school. Prior to that, she spent 8 years as a special ed teacher. She did general education. She taught gen ed for a year. And then before that, she started as an ed tech. So Carrie has really worked hard and she has worked her way up. And now, to be an assistant principal is really a great thing. Carrie brings a lot to the table. I don't know if you've worked with her, if you've gotten to know her, but she is very organized, very reliable, very structured. She's very dedicated to Lewiston Public Schools, and she's just all around a great human. So I'm really excited to have Carrie on our team.
Would you like to speak now or after we vote?
Now.
Okay.
I just want to say that I'm so grateful and thankful for the opportunity. I'm really excited to be able to bring my experiences and skills to be able to support even more students at a tier 1 level. I'm really, really excited to be a positive impact on our building. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any conversation, discussion, questions, or motion from the committee? Member Bowden?
I'll make a motion. It sounds like this is going to be a great fit. So I would like to, I'm blanking out. Carrie Jackson. Okay. Thank you. I'm making the motion to approve Carrie Jackson for the assistant principal position at Lewiston Middle School.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Congratulations. Agenda item number 4 is to receive and potentially vote on the nomination for Cassidy Delcourt to the interim special ed assistant principal position for Lewiston Middle School, and Director Crafts will present.
Good evening again. I'm bringing Cassidy Delcourt here tonight to nominate her for the special education assistant principal position at Lewiston Middle School. Cassidy started working here in 2015 as a BHP in our RISE program. She became a teacher there. She led all the BHPs and worked really closely with the BCBAs. When I took over in this role, I hired her as the intervention coordinator, really looking at our abbreviated days and taking care of our Department of Justice agreement and the special ed components of that. She's done a wonderful job in that position. She's got us down to only 2 kids on the list, and she works with all the different buildings and has built relationships with all of the administrators and a lot of teachers. She is one of our TCI trainers. She's constantly training people on how to write appropriate behavior plans. She's just an all around she can do anything basically in terms of having to do, behavior wise and problem solving and thinking creatively. She has really helped me when I've been down. She's always there saying, what can I do to help you out? And when I was down people, she stepped up and she helped me do that. And I will not forget that. She's just all around a very good person. So I'm happy to nominate her tonight.
Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Oh, I forgot to mention she does Next Step and Rooted as well. So, there's that.
I just want to thank you very much, Kirsten, for the opportunity and everyone for the opportunity. I look forward to being able to go back into a building. I've been working at the district level and I'm really excited to bring my skills into a building now. And I'm excited to be back at LMS. I taught there for a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or motion? Member Bowden.
I'll make the motion for Cassidy Delcourt to be the assistant principal of special education at Lewiston Middle School.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Congratulations. Agenda item number 5 is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like set aside? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Agenda item number 6 is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personnel matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 7, which is an update on staffing levels and enrollment for the 24-25 school year.
So I'll start with the end. Things are looking pretty good. We have, certainly we still have some vacancies, but we are measurably in a much better position than we were last year. I did share with you via email a report that Karen helped pull together for the student and teacher ratio. And if you have a chance to look at that, the numbers across the district are very manageable. They are a little bigger at Montello. They still are looking to hire. If anyone's out there interested in 4th, 5th, or 6th grade and around that range, please apply. We're still looking for ed techs and BHPs in our special programs. So if you know of anybody that's interested in those kinds of roles, please send them our way. But overall, not perfect. And I would like to see the numbers at Montello be a little better, but I think in comparison to last year when we had numerous classes that were very high and trying to manage that, we're in much better shape this year than we have been in the past.
Since you brought Montello up,
Yep.
One thing that did stick out to me was grade 5 at Montello. And you have a classroom with 26 in it. And I'm just wondering if that is legal, like a teacher-student ratio for that age. And I'm wondering why we have a class of 26, but then a class of 20. Like, it just seems like we could have spread that out evenly. So if you could just speak on that, please.
Sure. There's a few different variables that can play into that. What is the class? What's the makeup of it? Is it a more of the co-taught multilingual type model versus not? There are no state laws to my knowledge once you get above, I think, 3rd grade as far as classroom size. I would like it to be a little smaller than that. And these could still get reshuffled and dispersed a little differently before Wednesday. And even after in response, once they have a better sense of it. This is one of those areas where they have open positions. And if we had another teacher there, it would reduce those numbers, or we might even have someone teach multi-grade to reduce 4-5 or 5-6, depending on how the makeup would go. Do you want to add to anything to do with that 26 and 20?
Yeah, I mean, I could update this hourly this week because the number of students that transfer in and transfer out. And often there may be 2 or 3 students that transfer out of one classroom and they just haven't redistributed the numbers of the students. So I expect that will happen there. This was, I don't know, 8 or 8:30 this morning when I did it. So I'm guessing that might happen. But Jake is correct. Around the student teacher ratio per the law, there isn't one that would not allow us to go up above the 25 or 26, but we obviously don't want to if we don't have to.
And I think another constraint around that is the physical size of the class. So if you get much more than that, Montello's not really built for really large classrooms.
Do we have ed techs in place to help out, like kind of float around with Montello with the classroom sizes being so large?
So there may be some, but again, we're still looking for ed techs. That's an area of we need more ed techs kind of district wide. So we're hoping that. I did get we had a question come up. I think it was member Bowden that asked about, do we have any comparisons from pre-COVID and the current numbers and any trends that have come along? And so Director Gallant pulled together some information for me. And she said that things are trending much better. And actually in comparison from prior to our turnover rates for new hires has reduced greatly. And so I have a bunch of charts here, but if I was going to pass this out, I'd want it to be much cleaner as far as an explanation, because we use terms like open positions and closed positions, but really it's about fill rate and how long, if someone got hired as a new staff, were they in that position, or you can see overall openings. So for example, in 2022, which I know was not pre-COVID, but this is just one example, there were 659 open positions. And by open positions, that's in the calendar year, she said. So if a position was hired and then became vacant again, that'd be 2. So every time it's vacant. So in 2022, total open positions from an employment standpoint, we had 659. And in 24, it was in the 400s. So you can see that's obviously getting much better. And then she mentioned what she labeled as closed positions. So these are positions that once that happens, they stay. They're not leaving. A reduction from 298 in 22 to 120 in the current year. So it's the hiring number metric, if you will, of people that are coming and getting hired are large in part staying, which is something that we've worked hard to do, as you know, from a retention perspective. I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think we treat people well, but I also think our contract is fair and competitive. So I think there's a number of things that lead into that. She shared some turnover rates with me, and back in 20, the turnover rate was 3.6% overall. In 19, it was 17%. In 18, it was 13.5%. 15 into 16 was 10.2%. 16, 17 was 12.7%. Those are the turnover rates in the past. So the idea that we have a under 5% turnover rate now in comparison to teens and almost 20 is definitely trending in the right direction. I think our human resources department's also done a good job with recruiting and not just recruiting, but trying to find ways to support staff who are continuing to learn themselves to get towards certification. There's a lot of supports behind the scenes that are working toward that. So just want to share those as updates.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions about hiring, I guess, not so much I guess a little bit of student ratios, but have we hired a dean yet or that position for the middle school? I didn't see that on the.
Yeah, so in the consent agenda, there's an interim role, and that's going to be Chris Roy for the time being at the middle school. And the reason we did that as interim, similar to the AP role for special ed, is we just, because of the time constraint at the start of the school year, we wanted kind of our aces in our places if we can, and then we will still have to open those up and have a review process for whatever we get for applicants a couple weeks out at least, and go through a process to officially hire. But we do feel good about those two individuals in those roles.
Okay, and then my other question is, we have the city of Lewiston has some housing projects and developments that are in the works. And so looking at this list of student to teacher ratios, we are already at capacity at some locations. And I know you do, I'm sure you've done a lot of forward thinking, but what's our plan? Like if we run out of space, if we don't have teachers, like what's our contingency plan there?
I think the first thing would enroll students in schools that are not in their district. We would have to. So we have some schools like McMahon where their numbers are a little lighter. So we would take in students and we would have to disperse them in the city. The biggest challenge with that would be transportation. We have had some of those conversations already about, you know, the new building over here that's going in right now. If that lands X amount of new families, we may have to create that as a stop for a different school that's not typically stopping there to run to that school. That can get complicated for families because they could end up with kids in multiple schools over the years, but we'll try to minimize that as best we can. But I also think it goes back to the conversation we started to have last winter and spring on facility and space and projecting forward. So I think we have work to do anyway. I think in the short term, we're gonna be okay. We can absorb what I think might happen in this school year. Of course, there's always unforeseen things that I'm not aware of yet. But I do think when we go year 2, year 3 from today, we're looking at potentially hundreds more students, depending on who moves into the apartments that are going to be completed or renovated and available to the public. It's going to have a real impact on our community. We have talked to Scott Brown at the state of Maine. He works for the Department of Education, but he works on teaching and learning spaces. You may hear his name again later when Bill comes up, but he's already talked about if you need modulars, if you need more emergent like turnover, he said the state is equipped to support some of that. I'd rather not take a modular long-term approach, but we may have to do some kind of short-term thinking on modulars unless we can secure other funding for other projects, which we continue to look for outside of the Lewiston tax base.
Agenda item number 8 is to discuss and potentially vote on the energy savings through adding to our existing solar array arrangement.
So I had mentioned this prior, but we didn't have the documents back from legal yet. We now do, but in essence, we anticipate saving about $25,000 in addition to the existing savings that we had. That's that credit structure where the grid generates power, we make a payment, we get the credits, and it turns into a bit of a wash, and we save money, and also it's much more efficient from an energy source perspective. That would require a vote because we'd be engaging in a contract. So if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer, and Bill may have some answers too.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. I don't remember if I asked this last time or if we discussed this, but are we responsible for any maintenance, or if something happens or it breaks, or when they're ready to tear it down at any point?
Yeah, so I'm that I come at those things like that. What if a tree falls on it? What if it doesn't work anymore? What if it just ages and needs to be replaced? We have no maintenance or use or disposal costs tied into these contracts whatsoever. I really think the way it plays out is they go get federal dollars, they do the projects, and we help fund the projects actually going in. So they make a little bit of money on the output, but they also make a little money on the federal subsidy of the piece. We don't get those dollars. We get the credits, which is another state and federal supported program.
Member Gallant?
I remember discussing this earlier, I think in the year, but did we determine what the cost savings would be if we went with them?
We anticipate this to be $25,000 a year.
Member Bowden?
So, so this would essentially put solar panels, no, what would this?
And so the solar array exists elsewhere,
Okay.
and they look for partners to buy into the solar array. So that's essentially what this agreement does. In buying into it, we get credits for what the solar array has for an output. And there's an estimated savings because those credits, they come off of your CMP bill, if you will.
Okay, so
So
we
that-
don't have to put anything on our property. That's what I was
Correct.
questioning.
Yep.
Okay.
No, this is a solar array elsewhere, and I think it's Gardner. Bill, does that sound right?
I don't know exactly where it's going, but essentially what we're doing is we're buying the power at a certain rate. And so we lock in at that rate, which then allows us to get the credits on our CMP bill. If they don't produce any power, we just don't pay anything for the power that they didn't produce.
And we asked those questions in the process and with legal looking at the document because solar panels can produce less power as they age. And so I didn't want to have this, oh, look at all the money we saved and then nothing, but we're still paying for the array. So there are some protections built into that contract.
Member Heard.
Thank you. So, I'm assuming during budget cycle, we budget for a certain amount of dollars for electricity. So did we budget for what we thought total without savings, or did we budget what we thought with the savings?
So we would have budgeted without that savings, and it's actually still not in play yet. So once we sign the contract, we'll have to look at the start date, and then we go from there.
So what happens to that extra? Does that go into the,
It could become fund balance. It
Fund
could be at times if there's savings like that, the committee can decide to do certain things. Like I think, I don't know if it was last year, the year before, we did some camera upgrades. That was with some other unspent dollars. That's how that could be spent or be carried over.
Member Gallant.
Yes, two questions. What would our cost be for this? And the contract, what's the length of the contract that we will be working on?
So this is a 20-year agreement, it's my understanding. And it's the way it works by cost is it just offsets with the credits. So we kind of think of paying the same bill every month for the particular facility. This happens to be the high school. That's the offset. And then it washes throughout time and generates savings.
Member Ames.
Yeah, when this first came up, I was concerned about the 20-year prospective look and how hard that would be to predict. And so I still am a little concerned about that. So I just want to put that out there on the table as something 20 years is a very, very long time in the energy world. And I am a little leery about locking into something that is going to be in 2044, we'll still be doing this. Thanks.
Counselor Harriman.
Thank you. When we lock in a price, are we locking into a price that's relative to the standard offer from CMP, or are we locking into an actual dollar or cents amount for what we pay?
All right. So my understanding of how this works is we get $1 credit and it's on our monthly electric bill. The way in which that's created is, and Bill, come correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like 100% value of that credit. We get 85% of it in credit, and then this other organization that put in the solar array gets the other 15%. So that's how they kind of dip on that side of things to make money. We do have projections for the cost of the kilowatts per hour that we consume based on, again, this was a high school calculation, that particular space. And so think of it as a subscription model. And Bill, I don't know if you want to add, the 20-year piece was definitely a concern that I had, but go ahead.
So the 20-year piece was a concern. So we had done this and the board had voted on this, I'm getting 6 months ago, I think. And that was a $75,000 savings, right? So you're kind of locked into a price, which they compare to what your current bill is, and they project this is how much you would save. we talked about the 20-year and what the out clause is, and there is an opportunity and out clause after 10 years, I believe, but there is also in there, if the solar array again shuts down, we're not paying anything different. We just pay our regular bill, kind of a thing. So as Adam brought this forward, it was really like, okay, we can do nothing, or we have this out here and we can get into this, and at least it's kind of like a no-brainer because we're not, owning solar panels. We're not putting them on a roof. We don't have to maintain them. We just have to say that we're going to buy this power at this rate.
Have the people that provide this service, have they shown like comparables for other school districts or other businesses that have bought in, and it looks like, is there years worth of data that supports savings or?
Yeah, and even our own savings, because we did see that in our bills. So like when we were budgeting for this year, we actually budgeted less for energy for the FY25 year because we had some savings from this. A lot of these credits and a lot of these things have already happened. And so we kind of come into it at the end. And then to get into this kind of second piece of it, there happened to be another solar farm locally going in, I think, in like the Gardner area, or I'm not going to say where it is because I don't remember. But needless to say, we had an opportunity to purchase more. So Adam brought it to us. And again, it's like from Adam's standpoint, he looks at it, it's a guaranteed kind of right up front savings in that first year. So, and we saw that happen the first time around with our power bill.
Member McLaughlin?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the risk from this would just be that maybe some better opportunity comes along in 5 years that we miss because we're locked into this, which it's not nothing, but it seems like a reasonable risk for us to assume now to achieve the projected savings that we know we can get now. That seems like a good choice to me.
I was invested in the 10-year out language, which actually I don't think existed in the first contract. We asked for that to be put in, and this is an addendum so that it still exists. It was because of that. I think of things like micronuclear, and who knows what technology will do in the next 5 years to fundamentally shift the way we consume energy or the way in which it can be gathered or stored. So I did have that thought that there's somebody out there a little quicker than me with energy trying to figure out a better way, and didn't want to be married to this forever. So if there's no other questions, I just would need, if the committee wishes to approve, a motion to direct me to engage in this addendum to our net energy billing subscription.
I will make that motion. Do I have to repeat the specific phrasing or?
So the motion would be to direct the superintendent to engage in a contract for the net energy billing subscription.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to direct the superintendent to engage in a contract for the net energy billing subscription. Great.
Is there a second? Seconded by member Gallant. Any further discussion? All in favor? Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, 1 opposed. Thank you. Agenda item number 9, to receive and potentially vote on school construction grant application approval, concept approval for building replacement.
So Bill has plenty of information he can share. I just want to touch base on this. So before we say any names of school buildings, it doesn't mean we're just replacing them. This is a cycle that opens up once every so often. The state dictates when. The last time the cycle opened up was 2017, I believe, Bill, something in that range. And what this is this is to fill out an application with a level of detail to get your name on a list that could be 10 plus years out. So when we think of that, the two buildings we're looking at are Montello and the middle school. So just these windows don't open very often, so we wanted to at least, Bill, you want to talk about the process a little bit?
So it's a rating cycle. Jake did a good job. 17, 18 was the last time the window opened to put in applications. So when the window opens, every school district is going to put in, because everybody needs, I mean, you just read the paper and you hear districts talk about their buildings and things. So they're going to put in an application. This kind of coincided with something else that we're trying to do with LCIP, which is the facilities assessment that we have money approved for. So as we looked, okay, the window opened, it's, been 7 years since the window last opened. Let's look to get some schools in there. Montello and LMS is our oldest building. Montello is an elementary school that was originally built as a middle school. So there's a lot of retrofitting and things like that in there. So from a facility standpoint, it made sense to do those two. At the same time, we did a facilities assessment on them to help us get this application in. So we now have a facilities assessment on both these buildings. But what the action is tonight is to direct the superintendent. It would be 2 votes to approve him submitting an application for Montello's major capital school construction program. And then the same thing for LMS.
Is this the same process that led to the merger of Martell and Longley?
Yep.
Okay. Member Bowden?
I love that we're able to do this again, but can there be like a stipulation that we do not combine any elementary schools together this time, please?
Yeah. So they do ask about a consolidation. There's a consolidation question on there.
We're too big for that.
And let me see if I can follow. So I can give you what our answer is to that. With a growing student population and the space constraints of our existing schools, Lewiston Public Schools has not actively considered consolidation. However, we are looking for ways to ensure our student population is evenly distributed among school buildings. The district is not exploring consolidating with another SAU. So while I can add in there specific language that says we're not looking to combine our elementary schools, but one of the things that makes this competitive for the state is that consolidation, because many school districts don't have a growing school population like Lewiston. The line that talks about evenly distributing is more to kind of strengthen our application to say that we would be willing to look at things to ensure that we had, evenly distributed student populations across our district.
And then kind of as a follow-up is with respect to the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've had conversations about this in our pathway committee, about having possibly more than one middle school, and one maybe more trade focused. Is there a way to put that into the application? Because I think that would be huge for Lewiston.
Yeah. And that's kind of like how that sentence came together as we were kind of talking and writing, was that. So this isn't just a shut process and we put this application in. There would then be site visits. There would then be additional questions, and that very well could come up in that conversation. Like I said, every 7 years this happens to get this building done. I don't know, maybe in 10 years, you'll be like, oh, thank goodness Bill Grant came up here to talk about submitting it in that window, or you'll curse me. But needless to say, we have to do it in there, but there is this process, and that very well could be part of that process to say, look, and really, we're actually looking at 2 buildings that belong to Lewiston Public Schools, that one is the current middle school and one wasn't a middle school. So.
Member Eames?
Also on the pathways, there was talk about making it a 6, 7, 8 school.
Yeah.
And that would lower the pressure on the other elementary schools if we got a 6, 7, 8 school.
So in the LMS application for that, we do talk about that LMS, because of space, is only able, while it's called a middle school, is only able to have 7th and 8th grade.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. So let's just say we get approval. Would they, let's just say, talk about the middle school, demolish it and then build something in its place? Like, how does that work? Because I'm thinking space over there. If you're going to add a whole nother grade, there is like no wiggle room over there of where you can expand. So how does that?
So it's a whole process. You would have a committee that starts looking at sites locally, starts talking about, well, what do you want to do if the middle school is still there? Janet, you were on the Connors one, I believe. So it's pretty involved, and it would be, and Megan, you were too. And Elizabeth. Okay, all 3 of you. It's a very involved process, and the state doesn't dictate certain things. What the state will do is they'll have cutoffs. They'll say, well, we'll pay for this. And if you want that, that's on you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But short of that, they will It is a very involved process. You look at multiple sites, feasibility studies, and realistically, and I'm saying this on video, so I hope it doesn't come back to haunt me too, but this could be something that is 15 years from now, if we get on the list, unless something shifts in federal funding around schools being rebuilt, which there is some energy behind at the federal level. But I don't think it's going to expedite us. I've been to other school districts and I know some of the schools that are on the existing need to be rebuilt list. And there's some schools in some pretty rough shape out there.
And they only fund like the top so many, right?
It really depends on what gets to the top of the list. So when you have a school like Edward Little to the top of the list, it's gonna lessen the number of people at that top of the list that are gonna get funded this time. So.
Member Glant?
Yeah, so how do they choose? So if every district puts in a request, how do they choose who gets to be the top of the list?
So it's just a rating cycle. So that's what the whole application has. That's why, they didn't require a facilities assessment for this time around, but we were planning to have it done anyway. So we enlisted Harriman to do it on those buildings to see what it would look like as we go to do our other buildings. And so they'll rate that and they'll rate everything, and then you get a score, and then that generates what goes on the list.
Do you know what any of those factors are for that scoring? Like,
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that is in our favor is student population. So schools that run out of space, they also look at the age of the facility, air quality, where the building is in its life cycle of repair, how where it was located, the school security type things they look at. So they look at, there's a whole list of facilities. Folks had seen this in our committee. There's 7 things, major topics: HVAC, mechanical and electrical. I can't think of all 7, but anyway, that they look at, that looks at facilities and what a building's life is.
There are other considerations too, from my understanding, that include things like your population and level of need.
Yeah.
I know that Sanford got quite a new, well, they got a new, more comprehensive high school and technical center. I don't know, about 5 years ago now. They had, I think, 13 or 15 modulars outside of their high school just to have classes. So their building was actually not as bad off as some others, but because of their population need, it triggered. These modulars were like 10, 12 years old. So the modulars were pushing the end of their useful life, and they needed all of them to run their day-to-day classes. So those factors play in. I said earlier when we talked about the other items, Scott Brown at the state has already heard from me and from Bill. We're talking on a regular basis about, we know there's going to be an influx of students. We can't just act like we don't know that's coming. So we're hopeful that getting ahead of it early gives us more options, but also I think gets the ear of people that are thinking about which schools need which things, if your population just gets that big.
Counselor Harriman?
Thank you. I see this says school construction grant and for building replacement. Do they ever do anything for rehabilitation of an existing building, like a major rehab, or is it strictly focused on new builds?
No, I believe they look at that as well, that it could be a major rehab to a building. I think sometimes they get away from that because of the disruption to education when you do a full rebuild. So, whether that has to do something with the rating cycle. But what's interesting about the middle school as we were going through this, excuse me, that's our oldest building, but there was many things that we said were adequate. And I was actually saying to Jake, I'm like, but it's from the front of the building. As you start to go back in the building, all of a sudden things don't become as adequate because we have that new addition.
Member Glant?
Yeah, so how old is the building? Lewiston Middle School?
Oh, gosh, I don't have that up. It's 1800s, and then the Montello is 1960s. Martell, I think, was a 1950s structure. I could be off on that, but I think it was
the middle school was renovated in 2013.
13, yeah.
And if it doesn't seem like so long ago, at least for me having familiar memories, but that was 11 years ago. And that improvement was built around good bones and adding some more space. And as you know, the middle school is very, very full every day.
Member Bowden?
Okay.
Thank you.
1931 was what school?
The middle school.
The middle school was 1931.
Yeah, and that was the original high school, folks remember.
So this might not be a popular question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When I was on the last committee, when it was for Martell School, they added Longley into the equation and said that we'll fund it if you want to combine Longley and Martell. We all know that story. And the idea behind it was Longley was basically uninhabitable, is what they told us. And we were supposed to stop using Longley or get rid of Longley, and we never did. And we are still using Longley to this day, and it still is full of problems and could use rehab. So is the state going to hold that against us, that we never actually got rid of that building? Because I was under the impression we had to get rid of that building, and we never did. Like I said, probably not the most popular question, but I've actually had other people ask me as well, so I might as well ask it publicly.
That's a fair question. I think when, at least my understanding of how this works is it's a municipal property. And so kind of like Martell, when Martell was shut down and not deemed usable, it had some mixed uses for things that has since been raised, but that became possession of the city once the school department said we're no longer going to use this facility. So that transfers back to the city, and I think everybody knows that there's project plan for that space. But if a school system wants to continue to use a space, there are things like there's a revolving fund, which is more specific, smaller pockets of money. We've applied for that a couple of times. We've yet to get one of those, but we'll keep putting in things like the science lab effort, or I know some schools have gotten it because, for example, their water system has failed. So if they're on a well and their well breaks, the state will use those revolving renovation funds. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but those funds for those kinds of things. If you have a legitimate safety thing, the septic system needs to be replaced, or your sewer system connections are backflowing into schools on a regular basis, that's what those funds are for. They're more emergency. But we have seen some rehab projects done, but the state does tend to want, I think communities also want new at times. And I think that it can get costly too. Can you just restate your question then? I don't.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, does the state look down upon the fact that last time they said, here, we'll give you the money, replace these schools, and we're still using one of them. One of them's been torn down because we all know, but the other one we're still using, and that really, it wasn't good then. It's still not great now. So does the state look at that like, oh, they didn't follow through on their end of the bargain here?
I've not heard anything like that as far as how they look at those projects. And I know a number of districts that have continued using buildings that were replaced with improvements and continued use.
And I don't believe part of the rating cycle is past construction and how things were used, so.
I think part of that is just for those of us that were on that committee, it wasn't just like a casual mention of, oh, this building shouldn't be used anymore. It was like beat into our heads that this building cannot be used. It's not adequate at all. There's mold, there's heating, like everything. It was beat into us how horrible the building was. And so I think for those of us that heard those conversations, it seems weird that we're still using it 10, 11 years later when it was so bad then.
Tears telling us how terrible the building was, and then we never stopped using it. So that's just a concern of mine. And I know it was a concern of the communities, like, so if we, I don't know, it just seems like we did that backwards. I don't know.
I don't want to just scapegoat, but that definitely predates me. I do think it was interesting when when there was a community push to do the expansion at the high school, people wanted to say very, very strong things about how those classroom spaces could not be used in the downstairs of the high school. And I was really vocally, publicly trying to temper that language because the high school is growing and those spaces are still needed for instruction. Obviously, we added, and that helped get the 18 or so teachers off of a cart for the most part. But those spaces educationally are still needed. So they've been, we chip away at rehabilitating them and making them usable. So, yeah, I try to be cautious with the language and I don't know if that was positioning to get the new thing. But I think we want to be careful with our language, even if we get up on a list like that.
Member Eames.
I have memories of Farwell coming down and the kids being bused elsewhere for a year.
Just an addition.
No, earlier, when the old Farwell came down.
Mm.
My kid had just graduated, so it wasn't my kid, but kids we knew, neighborhood kids were being, I think it was to the mall or something for a year. And then back, but then once it was built, obviously they had this wonderful new school. Yeah. So that's one of the models that they use, I guess, just put the kids somewhere else for a year while the new thing is going up, if you can't find another space.
Right.
Is the property, I know Montello has a significant amount of land around it compared to some of our other schools. Is there enough space at Montello that they could build a school there and?
I don't know if there's been engineering studies to say that, but I mean, if you were to look at it, you know, sometimes Jake and I think we're contractors or something. We'll look at it like, yeah, I can do this in no time. But I think engineering studies and things would have to do, and that becomes part of that process. And, you know, that becomes part of like the land acquisition that happens in the whole piece of it. But, you know, with a Montello, where it's located, if we were on the list, maybe people would say we'd like to keep it on that site and we would look at it, but there might have to be some acquisition of property that happens, you know, during, much like they did up at Edward Little High School, right?
Member Heard?
Thank you. Is there anything that the state requires that says, I mean, we just got Connors, so you can only receive after so many years or so many within, you know, are there any restrictions about how many times you can be awarded?
No, the wind, like I said, that window opens, it can be 4 years when this this cycle opens, or like this one, it was 7 years. Or 6, 7 years before the window opened again. And so when that opens, you know, I think every district is ready to go and put in an application to see where they land. But could they? I don't know. I don't know who's going to be sitting on it and rating these things, but.
So yeah, that was my question. Like, does it harm or hurt or hinder us or
No, and
disqualify us in any way?
Right. And I think if you look at, you know, Lewiston's history in 2009 is when Geiger was built. And so if you kind of look at the rating cycle being every 10 years, in 2017, or excuse me, 2019 is when Connors opened, but that construction started before then. So, you know, we were probably in that next window where we finished a school, we put in for the rating cycle, and then, you know, we also had a huge expansion of our student population at that time too, which helped with Connors.
Member Bowden?
I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion. We have to make 2 separate motions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so I will make a motion to, I guess, ask Jake to go ahead with the construction grant application for Montello Elementary School.
I'll second that.
And can I ask to add submit the
And,
application?
and submit the application as well. Are you okay with that amendment?
I'm still okay with that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Told you.
And then, and then I'll go ahead and make the same motion to instruct Jake to fill out and submit the grant application for Lewiston Middle School as well.
And submit, I will second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Huh? No.
Agenda item number 10 is to receive and potentially vote on the second reading of policies listed as A through J. Second reading. This says second reading. Do we have different agendas? Oh, you probably aren't looking at the most updated agenda.
Oh, it is the second.
Because maybe it was corrected the other way, because this is the old agenda, it says second.
Yeah, the new one says first.
Oh.
Oh, we definitely seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the old one.
The most updated says first or second.
It is the second, right? We've read the.
Second.
Yeah. I just clicked on the one that was sent at 2:47,
Oh,
and that one says first.
I think it is the second. Because
You
we
voted on, yeah, you voted on the first read at the last meeting.
Yep. Okay.
I don't care.
Says did you want to present anything on this before we vote?
I'll just say out loud publicly that there were no changes made to the policies since the first read, so they're exactly the same.
Member Gallant?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Security, I don't know which one I read, but what was the security camera system or the administrative camera system? However, I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the cameras throughout the school, whatever school it is on a continuous monitoring. There's someone monitoring those cameras during this time, live monitor.
We don't have people live monitoring our camera systems, but we have people that have access that they can live monitor. But we don't think of it like we have a security station where someone's just looking at cameras.
Okay.
But they can be on. They can be. People can use their laptops to view things in different spaces. We can review old video wherever it's stored. And these policies really speak to us doing our due diligence to store them, but only up to so far because it costs money to store these things. And that we agree in policy to maintain the record so long as it's needed to be maintained.
Right, 30 days. I'll go back and read it, and because there was a word monitored in there, and I just want to go back and I'll look at it later. Thank you.
Are you okay to move forward with the vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Member Hurd?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the second read of the following policies listed A through J.
Seconded by Member Bowden. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Agenda item number 11 is report from the chair. The only thing I have to report on is the Lewiston Public Schools outreach and Store Next Door did the backpack event on Thursday, and it went really well. About halfway through, the sky opened up and it was a torrential downpour. But kids stayed in line and kept going for their backpacks, and it went really well, relatively smoothly. And it was just another wonderful event. And Member Gallant's husband got in the dunk tank, which was very entertaining for some people. 10 times? They got him down 10 times?
Yeah.
Wow. Good. Agenda item 12 is report from the superintendent.
Well, we're starting school this week. So today was our first day with staff back in their buildings. We've had a lot of staff related things, trainings, orientation, inducted last week and weeks prior. But this is the busy week. So we're getting excited to roll things out. The new climb program is well underway as far as its transition is concerned. We have staff, we're doing trainings, we have that rolling, but we have hit a snag and we are communicating with families directly. We are setting up a separate restroom that is ADA compliant, and between budget, timeframes and whatnot, it's a little behind. So we're trying to buy a little time. So some of those students are going to start, we're looking like right now the 9th of September. So about a week and a couple of days late. These are some pretty high need kids. We want to make sure they're not exposed to dust and tools or equipment, things like that. Where the project's at right now, today they were roughing in plumbing. The steel frame is there. They had to cut out the floor to tie into drains and create vents for the new bathroom setup. So at this point, Bill had his eye on the target about Wednesday to have drywall up. And once that happens, it's really about kind of that finished level of work. So we're not too worried about that. And we have a way to block that off. We also have corridor doors that we're modifying so that that space can be a little more to itself. That will take a little time. That won't be done all by the 9th, but I think we can isolate it, control it by then in a way that the kids will be safe and healthy environment for them. We have a number of facilities updates. There's a piece that will be going out, but I just want to rattle off a few things for projects and things that have been worked on and done. that people may not realize. But McMahon had a pretty massive roof project this summer. There's more to come with that. There's some structural work that has to be done over the cafeteria to be succinct, and they'll be redoing that roof over the next 12 months or so. And Bill, I think that would get McMahon's roof to a place where we should not see any more pretty significant leaks in the hallways. So the roof is not one level there because of the additions. And because of the way it's built, the subset or a step down part of the roof, which is in and around the cafeteria, it actually needs additional structural supports to add to the roof to do it right. So that's going to be a little bit of a project. Yeah.
Just a McMahon question since you're on the topic. I drove by Saturday and a lot of the fence was missing around the playground. And
Not anymore.
oh, okay, good. I was just gonna check to see if that got put
Yeah.
back.
So for a
Okay.
number of reasons, both some disrepair, but also the height of that fence was a 4-foot height fence, I believe. So now it's going to be 6 feet. And they were there today doing some more tie downs, and I think they had a couple more gates to put in, but that should be all set. But yeah, we did change that fence over. I mentioned the ADA compliant restrooms. There have been some things replaced on the playground. And also we've done some things with door access controls. We did get a grant to install generators at a number of schools. McMahon is one of those schools. So that work has happened or is happening. And Montello, new swings, basketball hoops. The access road had power poles that were failing, but we actually own them. So it's because of its being a right of way. And so we've worked on repairing those and upgrading some lighting out there. Montello also got a generator. Montello is one of our bigger storage spots for nutrition. So if we get a large donation or a large something from, say, USDA or something to that effect, that's where we put it because it has a bigger storage capacity than some of our other schools. But when we lost power, we'd always be at risk of losing $10, $15, $20,000 worth of food. So having a backup generator there is a nice have. The high school, the old dark room for film developing has been taken out. They do digital things now in that classroom where they don't actually develop old film. But that was a room that had a carousel that you stepped into and it spun and closed you in, and it was dark, and it had these big stainless and metal trays for chemicals, drains, vents. That's all been pulled out of there so we can use that for different educational use. The heating and cooling and controls project is still ongoing, but it's made a lot of progress, and that's coming along. If you take a drive, you might notice that we've removed some trees. There's a number of reasons behind that, including it's been difficult to mow around, especially the trees to the left side of the road that goes up to the fields, because they were staggered and it was just very time consuming. But also lines of sight. Those trees had reached a point where if you look out from inside the building, lines of sight from a safety perspective is a good thing. So we want to be mindful of that. See here, Longley, we had access controls upgrades happening. Also adding sensors there. I know we've had some break-in issues there, so the sensors should help pick up if someone's in the building when they shouldn't be. Replacement of the gym doors, which are going to solidify that exterior a bit. Firewell, there's some playground work that's happened there. Also, the PTA at Firewell has helped. We've worked with them to level off a portion of the play space so that it's more of like a flat field that can be used. People are pretty excited about that. To do that, we did do a little drainage upgrade work. And again, improved upon camera locations and some other sensors in Firewell. Connors, you'll see some different fencing going up on the playgrounds to separate the two. Something they've wanted to do for a couple of years, and we send buses through there in the afternoon, so it blocks that off. There's been some general building maintenance there, but as a new facility, newer facility, not a whole lot of change. Geiger, some playground drainage work, general building maintenance, and again, more of the security features, access controls, cameras, things like that. Middle school, there's been some lighting upgrades for brightness and energy savings. We're actually doing a study on that. We're monitoring how much consumption is happening in that space to see if it's worth the cost of kind of on a rotational basis, improving those district-wide. They're much brighter and easier to look at, if you will, with the LED technology. Hopefully that will save some funds. Delta Ed has some more signage down there that's helping with programming and directing folks where they need to go. And again, access controls and upgrades is happening there. But really, if you think about disassembling all these schools, doing all the floors, putting it all back together, our maintenance team and facilities team has really gotten a lot of work done. So we're pleased with that. It feels like it never ends, Bill, but it's made some good progress. We feel good about where we're at. What else do I have here in my notes for updates? Schools are messaging out, obviously, to students and families. There's some new things, specific to schools, like the high school has a new parking set up where you need a pass. Looking at just different ways schools are doing things, but just a reminder to families, school gets rolling on Wednesday. And your upperclassmen will have the one day and then they'll jump into the mix too. But be looking for your messaging in your typical formats, talking points, website, email, phone messages, things like that. And I think a big one that I'd be remiss if we didn't mention it is the ongoing concern about safety in our community. I don't have all the answers, but we need to continue our conversations. I know I've emailed all of you talking about some different efforts that are out there. I don't have the fix, but I think safety in our community around some of our youth and some of the things that have unfolded is a major concern. So we continue to make sure that we train people with avoid, deny, defend, make sure that our camera systems are as good as they can be so that we can have good security around that. I think the access controls is a big piece to really harden the external components of our schools where people have to badge in and the doors close and lock behind them. But really, we need to continue community conversation, and people need to make some decisions for their families and some of the things that kids are doing. And I do think but I think a big piece of this is parenting to an extent. I don't know that it's our responsibility as a school system to fix or take care of certain pieces, but I think as a community, it's all of our concern for sure. So I'll continue to participate in those groups and continue to do research around what other measures we might take as a school system to help. I will say I've been talking with juvenile corrections officers in our community and law enforcement and SROs and folks that we're connected closely with, and we are in good communication. They share what they can. There's some limitations, of course, because of privacy rights, but I don't feel in the blind or unaware of things that are happening in the community to a point that we can't be monitoring and trying to do what we can from a school perspective and keeping our kids safe at school. So.
I know in the past, we've had students that let non-students or kids that shouldn't have been on property in through like back doors at the high school and stuff. Are those sensors in place now? So if somebody opens those doors, somebody is alerted relatively quickly?
So censored, yes, to an extent. They're censored in the way that the camera system picks up movement now, and the old camera system didn't really monitor that in the same way. So we do have better systems, but it's still got its limitations. I think kids can figure out how to get around certain things, so we still worry about that. But we maintain staff on duty and our SRO to keep looking at those cameras and keep working the stairways and the hallways to make sure kids are where they're supposed to be. And I know it doesn't fix everything, but this committee has been very clear about what they will not allow as far as behaviors, and kids who were involved in those activities were expelled from school, and some remain expelled to this day. So I know that I think the general pulse in the student body is that there are things that will not be tolerated, and I'm hopeful that that contributes to be a deterrent.
Member Bowden?
Thank you. So I obviously don't love my new tax bill that came out, but I also don't love that we cut that SRO and the possibility of an additional 1 or 2 SROs out of our budget. I'm still kind of like upset about that. And I didn't know with the energy savings money that we just talked about, the solar energy savings money, is it possible that we take that and possibly put that towards another SRO in our district, especially, after hearing about, a teenager letting off shots the other day during an event that was full of families and children in the city. I've gotten emails from other committee members. I've gotten messages from teachers asking, how are we going to stay safe this year? This seems like we're starting off on the wrong foot. So, you know, even a conversation with Amber Heard, the SRO was looking pretty good right about now. It's too bad we don't have that in our budget. So is there any way to look at possibly adding that back in the budget?
I mean, the reality is, I can do a little homework to see what it would cost us to bring that back. The savings isn't realized yet, and it's that amount is not enough to fund that fully. But let me do a little homework and bring something back to. But the committee can approve unfunded things, and I would say that with some open positions that we have currently, it's certainly feasible to do something if that's what the committee wishes to do.
Member Heard?
Thank you. So I have two things. In response to Member Bowden, I had talked to Jake last meeting, and we had talked about Title IV covering a new SRO position. So that is also an option. I know that would take money away from other things that are already funded by Title IV. But again, if you're saying there's some open positions, or maybe we can find some other grants or funding that could also cover something in Title IV if we were to put a new SRO position that would be covered by that. I think that's also an option that I would be happy if that's something like you can look at as well. And I don't know if this would, the other thing is, I don't know if it would fall as a community announcement, but I noticed as my children are going back to school, there's a new, I don't want to say like interface, but with the school lunch, it's different now. And so I don't know if you can talk about that for a second, because I logged on there and I was like, where did my lunch PDF calendar go?
So it's still there. There is a link. It's being shared out, obviously. So it's there. That new interface is going to allow at some point in time, my understanding is to do more things like add funds to your kids' balance, check your balance, see what they're getting, those kinds of things. So that's the reason for the shift there. And it also allows for multiple people to update it, where the other one, the PDF, was kind of sitting on one person. And I remember last year, I think Alyssa was at a conference and it didn't get updated, and we got inundated with people saying, we don't know what's for lunch today. And so we're hopeful that this interface will allow for more people to contribute. But yes, there is a new website link that will allow you to see elementary and middle and high school lunches. And there's supposed to be some pictures too, right, at some point, so to show how beautiful the food intends to look.
I had just a couple more questions. On the conversation of the school safety, you said that like you talk with PD and stuff frequently about what's going on, whether it can be shared with us as a committee or not. Are you getting information as far as like this student may have been involved in the community, and so that you can put extra precautions in place around specific students, or do you not even have access to that level of information?
So yes, I do. I think I get information that is more sensitive than available to the general public. And the SROs are really a bridge for that, because SROs can be knowing of both sides of things because they see the kids at school, but they can be knowing of police work or policing, and have direct lines of communication without barriers to the juvenile corrections officers. So SROs can become very helpful with those kinds of things. And I think people know I'm a bit relentless. If I hear something, I call people until I get more information. We have to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our schools safe. But yes, they are in good communication and share what they can. Yeah.
And then a couple less serious, I guess, questions. Just to confirm, the Farwell Playground will be open for students when school starts?
I'm kind of looking
Bill?
over towards Bill. Farwell
It will,
Playground.
okay.
I think it's still set now, but I'm.
Okay. And I had one other question. What was it? Oh, as of yesterday, somebody had reached out to me and said that they still didn't have bus routes. Are those out now?
Bus routes are out.
They are? Okay.
Yeah, okay, good.
So it might be different than in the past. It wasn't in the newspaper in the traditional format. There were emails sent out. High school families should have received emails. Each school should have sent out letters with information, and they all did that in a variety of ways. Some may have included it in a welcome letter. Some may have sent them out separately. But if folks don't know what their bus routes are, please call their school. Just like with the nutrition department, we've transitioned to a new routing system, which allows schools to go right into the routing system and be able to see exactly where stops are. It's no longer relying on spreadsheets and documents. So it's a live piece of software that schools can go in and see that as the routing happens. So we ask families to call and check with schools if they don't know what their bus routes are.
And just for fun, it's year 2 of that software, so it should not be as full of glitches as we experienced last August.
So is there anywhere that a parent can like log in on our website or anything to check their bus route like there used to be, or do they have to call?
There is a way for parents to get into the system, the transportation system, probably more than what I can explain here.
Okay.
So I would say call the school and more information will come.
And it's just not as simple as it used to be.
Correct.
Okay.
But and to check your email and your mailbox, you may have a letter and or a message directly to you that has all that information in it.
Okay. Thank you. Member Heard?
Thank you. So this just goes back to school safety, and I feel like I should know the answer to this question, but my concern is mostly at the high school where we have students who are potentially registered as students who may not be coming on a regular basis. Things happen in the community that they're involved in, and then maybe they come back to the school because school is potentially a safe place for them to get away from those other things that are happening in the community. But then they're potentially bringing those dangerous things to our doorstep as students. So is there a law or regulation or something, like if you find out from LPD or whoever that one of our students who is registered, there was some sort of something that happened out in the community, is there a way for the school to say, sorry, you can't come here anymore? Like, because I know we have to have like disciplinary hearings and expulsions and suspensions, and like, how does that all work?
So the real answer is through due process. So students have to be afforded a hearing with the committee to do that. There are some provisions out there with things like I think the term that I've heard used before is deliberately delinquent. So it's a bit of a crossover, and we have to be very thoughtful about the scenario. But at my discretion, I could bring a student to the committee for a disciplinary hearing that could end any way the committee votes within the law for an incident that did not happen at school. So there is a little room there. We have in fact done that. I think there was one last year that we did that the committee voted to expel for a community-based incident.
There's so much, I want more answers, and I know that they don't exist, but along the same lines, if a student is involved in something in the community, and whether they're coming to school or not, do we have things in place for like outreach to not just to discipline these students, but to get in touch with them and find out if they need additional supports, or to get in touch with their parents and see if their parents need additional supports in managing the behaviors? Or do we have, and this crosses over to a lot of parenting, which isn't our responsibility, but do we have anything to kind of bridge those gaps?
I mean, I think administration is doing that every day, trying to connect with kids and see what's going on and what's the pulse and what's the buzz of things, and talking to families and doing that on a every single day basis. Is it enough? Probably not. I think it's going to take the whole community, every nonprofit, every religious facility, every community center, it's going to take everybody. And I still think that there's some real challenges in and around access. So I think, we can't presume that anyone who has a firearm is going to a store and buying them. There's a lot of gun theft, but gun theft can only happen if there's access to it. So I would encourage everybody, if you own firearms, that you put it in a safe, you lock it up, you take care of it, you don't leave it in a car, you don't leave, there's things you don't do because they can be stolen, taken, and disappeared and used for things that they're not intended to be used for. And so, and I'm not going to stump about firearm safety, but I really think the first thing anyone can do if you own a firearm is to take care of it appropriately. And then it doesn't disappear and end up in the hands of a youth or somebody else.
Member Bowden?
Thanks. So just as like a reassurance for parents out there, for, especially for parents of kids who are entering the middle school, parents of kids who are entering the high school, do our principals and building administration have a talk with the entire school within the first week and really kind of hammer in what you've been saying, which is see something, say something to our kids. Like, is that happening this year? Are we going, like, not to scare everybody, but is administration going to have a talk with kids about safety at school and really being vigilant and really making sure you speak up even if it's a rumor, speak up to an adult if you hear something? Like, is that happening this year?
Yes,
Okay,
that will be happening.
wonderful.
Member Medina?
So kind of along those lines, I wanted to say something like that, but also I think that, we tell kids to, if you see something, say something, but there's a lot of fear behind that. So a lot of kids are afraid to speak up, especially with the increase of violence. Some people are really going to be like, am I really going to get hurt? So is there a way, is there some sort of platform or something where kids can give tips anonymously? And I know that comes with its pros and cons because, kids will be kids and make stuff up, but like Member Bowden just said, a rumor, it's better to hear something than to not. I know they have that at like the police, they have like an anonymous tip line. Is there something we can have like that here where kids can feel comfortable speaking up? Because that's a real fear.
I think the anonymous tip line to law enforcement, if we're talking about things like firearms, is the right call. I can't go to a house and search. So I don't have that authority from that lens. And obviously there's safety concerns for that. At least I have safety concerns for myself with that. But I do think that anonymous line that the city does have for LPD is a valuable tool. And I actually just talked to someone this morning about perhaps gathering that information on a sheet and just getting it up on walls. So kids know, like, you can tell your principal, but you can also call this number and I think you can text it even, but don't quote me. We'll pull that information together.
And that's great. But I guess sometimes, kids can even be scared to go to the police. I guess I was thinking more of like something that goes directly to the school and the school communicates with the police. I don't know how this stuff works. I'm just thinking. And I had another thought and it just left my brain. So sorry.
Member Gallant?
Has anybody thought or addressed the possibility of gang presence in Lewiston? We know that there has been gangs throughout the city, and I just wonder if we are aware of any of these, or what our position, or what, back in the day, they had DARE to help with those things. But if, I want to know what other people think about that.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. So, Counselor Harriman, was the city planning on doing some type of like forum or meeting or something? I feel like I've seen a bunch of things, but they'll say it's been canceled, it's been taken, or I don't know. And I just didn't know if you had an answer for that.
I know there was one that was going to be scheduled or was going to be held. I think it was Saturday morning. It wasn't affiliated with the city or organized by the city, and that one did get canceled. I think Generational Nor has recently scheduled another one, and I think it's coming up the next couple weeks or so. I was also going to mention during my update that I just found out this afternoon there's going to be a press conference on Wednesday with the police chief at City Hall. Wednesday, the 28th at 12:30 p.m. And he'll just address the recent shootings and go over some new initiatives that they're looking into. But as far as a conversation or a forum sort of thing, I know of the one from Generational Nor. I don't know of any others at this point.
So I would request, and I don't know if you can make that request, that maybe the city holds something. I've actually been talking to a couple of other counselors, and actually Member Bowden too. We saw that code enforcement has put a local building on notice because of a lot of things that are happening there. I think the public kind of needs to come out and say like what they would like to see happen, or if they have any ideas. I think, I'm a landlord, and I think it is our landlord's responsibility to make sure that they are thoroughly vetting their tenants before they rent to them. And they should be held responsible if they're, these types of things are happening, like you're having multiple warrants. that are being served at one building. And it's scary for community members who unfortunately don't have a choice. Like, these neighborhoods are all that they can afford, and they're being exposed to this on the regular. So I would ask if you can meet with your other counselors and ask maybe if there is something that they can put together, or something that they can do where the public can come and voice their opinion and kind of maybe give some ideas or something, because I think it's hard because we're not these parents, so we can't cross over, but I think it's together as city and school, we can probably come together and hopefully make something happen.
Yeah, I think it's really important for these conversations to be collaborative between the city council and city administration, police, and the schools, and then obviously community members and parents. But I think that all three of us need to be at the table in some form to have these conversations, because the overlap of the impact of this is everywhere. Member Medina?
My thought came back from earlier. So you had said that they're gonna have those conversations in school. Maybe you'll have some posters. I mean, could this be something that you even mention? Like, hey, there's this, line that you can give information to, and could that link also maybe go out in like a text message to everybody so everybody gets it and they know where it is? Is that something that could be done? Okay, and then also just to add on to a little bit what she said, these conversations are important. I live right in the downtown. My anxiety level is out of this world. I feel even just letting my son walk around now, I'm like, no, like, and it sucks to have to do that, but it's scary, and we need answers, and we all need to work together.
Are you done with your update? Anybody have anything else? No? Okay. Agenda item 13 is the update from our city council rep.
Thank you. Yeah, so the city council met last Tuesday, the 20th. We had a workshop and a discussion with our state legislators, and I know some of the school admin team were there for that discussion. We approved some minor changes to the homeless shelter license ordinance. There will be some more substantial proposals coming up either September 3rd or September 17th. Those are our next two meetings. We're just trying to get some recommendations from the ad hoc committee as to what they recommend what changes we could make to that. Along the same lines, we authorized the city administrator to issue an RFP for a low barrier adult shelter. And as I mentioned, this Wednesday, the 28th, 12:30, there will be a press conference at City Hall with the police chief discussing recent shootings. And that's all I've got for now.
Thank you. Are there any subcommittee updates? Policy met today, but same old, same old. Yes.
So I've been sending out invitations to meetings for the upcoming school year, so check your email. Sorry to blow it up, but I wanted to get those on the calendar. So just be looking for those. I have a few more to schedule, so I'll be in touch with members of those committees as well.
Thank you. Any community announcements? Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. I found the information about the generational NOR community conversation. So that's scheduled for Wednesday, September 4th at 5:30 p.m. at Connors. I think that was just scheduled today or yesterday, maybe. So there should be more coming out about that. But not associated with it, but I saw it announced somewhere and thought I'd spread the word.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Member Bowden?
Not really a community announcement, but I just wanted to say welcome back to all of our teachers and students, and thank you for coming back. And I hope first couple weeks of school are great for everybody.
Member Eames?
I did go to the, what was it called? Whatever it was called for. Induct Ed, yes, for the new people, and it was full. There were so many new people coming to work here, and it was just really energized and exciting to see.
Good. Member Hurd?
Thank you. So to piggyback off of what Member Bowden said, just to the public, our students are going back to school. Watch for them in the crosswalks, on the sidewalks, getting off buses, getting on buses. Just be very aware.
And don't pass buses. I don't know how you pass this big yellow school bus. Just stop doing it. Yes. Member Galant?
Yeah, I just wanted I attended and helped out at the backpack in at Longley, and I had a great time. I had a great time. I was the chip lady, and so the kids and the adults came by and they had to pick which chip they want. And sometimes there's a language barrier, so I would hold them up and try to explain, this chip is like this or whatever, so, but the most popular chip, if you want to know, with kids is the blue bag, which is Doritos Ranch. So,
Good to know. Thank you. Agenda item 16 is future agenda items. Member Bowden?
Oh, this isn't going to be popular either. So it just something I was thinking about when we were looking at the numbers, the ratio numbers, and then we were talking about possibly, getting on this list for new schools being built here or replaced. Is there something we could come up with? Not a redistricting necessarily, but I know. But looking into, we've got schools like Montello and McMahon that are so close together. They are right side by side, and the line that divides them, looking at McMahon's numbers are so low that like that line could almost be pushed out a little bit to take some of the slack from Montello. Just trying to problem solve in my head as I was looking at the numbers. Is there something we could look into? Not to shuffle the whole city around, but just possibly maybe expand the line a little bit here and there to kind of ease some of the overpopulation at some of the schools. Is there a way to do that without causing
Mayhem, chaos, fear, panic.
And I mean, yeah, and I will be forthcoming. I was super outspoken and I was not in favor of redistricting the whole city last time this came up. But it just seems like, we've had the conversation about the McMahon district and how a lot of the, younger families that moved into McMahon, all the kids have now grown and you just don't have as many kids in that district anymore. Is there a way to just sort of move the street lines over a little bit? So is that something we could look into? Not for any time soon, but maybe before the next school year.
Yes.
It's a very brief answer.
Yeah, well.
Anything further for future agenda items? Nope. Agenda item 17 is to enter into executive session on a legal matter in accordance with 1 MRSA 4056E. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Seconded by Member Bowden. All in favor? The school committee is in executive session at 6:59 PM.